I think the first time that we actually realised what we actually entered and how serious the event was when we got to Piazza Via Alpini and we saw the rest of the cyclists, and they were serious looking people, you know, wax legs, carbon bikes, papers in saddles. They really meant business. My suspicions were confirmed when Richie turned around to me and he said, you know, Steve, what's the story? Look at the boys, you know, look at them, Jesus Christ. You know, these lads are pros and here we are, you know, two lads from Ireland, he said. We're like frauds, the both of us. And you know, it was funny. It was funny what he said. We both felt the same, but he was right. We were like frauds, but like them, we were going to give it everything and do our best to try and compete and finish the route. And no matter what they threw at us, we were going to do it. I think initially our biggest concern was pace. From the start we were stepping along, and the minute we clipped in we went from 0 to 40 kilometers an hour nearly instantaneously. We were heading down via Milano and it was just crazy. People were zipping in and out, and you know, but in the back of our mind the most important thing was to try and retain some energy, because it was going to be a long day. And it's 170k of a spin, so we really needed to keep an eye on our pace and make sure that we had enough to get us around the whole day, because it was going to be a long day. I think we were only about 3 kilometers outside of the town when it struck me how serious the Italian cyclists were taking this, because we came to a bit of an abrupt stop to get off the main road and go on the route, and it was just a bit crazy. It was mayhem. They were overtaking inside, undertaking, they were crossing in front and shouting abuse at each other. It was only then that we realised that these people were serious people. The feeling of reaching the first little town, which was only about 3 or 4 kilometers outside of Bormio, gave us a great sense of what it was like to be in the Giro, or what it must be like to see the little villages, you know. There was going to be hundreds of these little villages dotted all the way along the road, but when we got around the corner of this village, just to see the sight ahead of us, a big long road and the line of cyclists. There was, I think, somewhere around 3,500 people on this cycle. It just felt really, really special going through the village at such high speeds. It just felt like we were really part of something big. I remember this part where we were absolutely hammering down the road. I think we were doing an average speed of about 65-70k an hour. and I could see this big white mountain ahead of me down the long road, and I just kept thinking, I didn't know where we were headed. I didn't know. I thought it was to Stelvio. But just seeing it ahead of me, just seeing the line of racers along the road, you know, you felt like you were in a huge peloton. Now, unfortunately, the camera didn't pick it up properly because it was so low down. And I'm sorry now that I didn't have it on my helmet, but you could really get a sense of how long the line was and how straight and how long the road was. It really did look amazing. Just the scenery, the whole thing added to the atmosphere. It was something I'd never experienced, and I really did feel so lucky just to be there. At this point here, from my position on the bike, I could see nearly, I suppose, the bones of 1.5 to 2 kilometers down the road, and you could see the cyclists in the distance, so it gave me an indication that there was still a fair bit to go, as in flat terrain. But the only bad thing about all of this was the fact that we were continuously going downhill. Meant that eventually we would have to go uphill, considering we'd have, I think it was the bones of 4,500 meters of climbing overall in the day. So it was going to be a very interesting day. In fairness, there wasn't very many stoppages. After all, it was a closed road and stoppages were kind of kept to a minimum. There was one here where it was a bit of a bottleneck, and there was another one I think in Teglio, and the previous one just as we left Bormio. But other than that, basically it was a case of ride as hard and as fast as you can, and you were allowed a free rein of the roads, which was a really special thing as well. I recall at this point that some chap went past me and shouted out in his best Irish accent, you know, "Go on, the inside wheelers!" And I don't know who he was or what club he was with, but I just felt really proud just to be part of it and to hear somebody recognise the club. You know, it was a nice little touch. There were a few other Irish clubs there. I remember in the airport we'd met 1 or 2 lads from Dublin that were there cycling over here also, and I think there was a few from Orwell Wheelers. 1 or 2 of their jerseys were spotted on the cycle. So and then again, Richie was supporting Ace and representing them, and yeah, there seemed to be a couple of Irish lads on the cycle. Levero was the first kind of, I suppose, bit of a drag upwards that we came across after leaving Bormio, you know. It was a lovely little town with cobbled streets there, as you can see, vineyards on either side, but there was a climb there coming out of it. It was about 8 or 9%, and it caught a lot of people by surprise, and a lot of people started getting off the bike and adjusting parts of their bikes. I don't know whether they had something wrong with their bikes or that they were just trying to make it look good, but you know, it was just a bit of a kick, just to give you an idea of what was about to come. But then there was a drop down out of Levero towards Toronto. My God, it was idyllic. It was so smooth, the roads were lovely, the sun was beaming, and it was turning out to be an exceptionally nice day. I think the biggest regret, if I had any of the cycle, was the fact that I didn't use a helmet camera. That way then I would have been able to give a better perspective and share the views rather than having a static camera stuck on the front of the bike. It was just down to bad planning. You know, the scenery was spectacular. You really felt part of it all. And even now, the views just looking at the screen, they're spectacular, but it still doesn't do it justice. It's not the same. There was something really cool about going down the back streets and alleyways of the Italian towns, winding through narrow streets, everything closed off so you felt safe. You knew that nothing was going to come the other way and block you or knock you off the bike, but you still had to be cautious. There could be obstacles on the road or whatever, or cracks in the ground. It just felt so cool. zipping through the streets and seeing all of the old churches and the scenery, the mountains and the vineyards, smelling the grass. It was perfect. Taglio was probably the first real climb that we did. I think it's a category 2 climb, and there were parts that were 18 or 19%. It was long, it wasn't an easy climb by any means. Now, it was doable, but there was a section where a car was blocking the way. Some of the less experienced cyclists got off the bike and started walking, which caused a bottleneck in turn, making others having to dismount. You know, walking is not really what people wanted to do. They were there to cycle. And then trying to get back on the bike and start off again on an 18 to 24% gradient, not very easy to do. It's just one of those things that happened. I suppose that it's one of the things that made it special. Without these little events, there wouldn't be nothing to talk about. cool thing about the cycle was the more you climbed, the more and more spectacular the scenery became. And in a way you were being rewarded for all of the hard work you were doing. Just climbing up and up and up and seeing the mountains rising up with you. And looking down below into the valley and seeing the vineyards and the lakes. It was spectacular. On the way up the climb, I noticed there was a problem with my wheel. It seemed to be rubbing the brakes a lot, and the caliper appeared to be a small bit loose, so I pulled in to try and fix it. This was the first time I lost Richie. Now, it only took a couple of seconds to get an Allen key and tighten up the brakes, but I headed on then again. I knew there was a food stop up ahead, and my hope was that I'd meet Richie there and we'd regroup. we had our first main food stop in Teglio. Again, it was a surreal scene. The whole thing feels surreal now when I look back on it. People sitting out in cafes, you know, watching you coming in. The Italians really loved their cycling. It was so cool cycling into these little towns with their big cathedrals, with their bell towers. I came into Teglio and it was mayhem. There were people everywhere. There was plenty of food, that wasn't an issue. But I was worried with all of the people around, how was I going to find Richie? It didn't prove too hard. Just to the left of the food stop, he was standing waiting, as good friends do. Lo and behold, there he was, camera in hand and ready to take a picture. After the food stop in Teglio, there was a lovely surprise in store for us. We went down the road about 100 yards, around a bend, and the next thing, the whole roadway opened up into a vista. It was just a series of S-bends the whole way down. If you look to the left, you could see the whole of the mountainscape. And I remember Richie pointing out to look over the side and see the other cyclists below us. But unfortunately, again, I was kicking myself that I didn't have the head cam on, but I was just so happy to be there and to be able to take it all in. When we were going around the S-bends, you could actually see the cyclists below you. Every time I looked down, I could see a line of cyclists, and looking back up, I could see them above too. I felt like a pro. I felt like I was on the Giro itself. There was one particular part where we came around an S-bend and the road nearly went in on itself. You could see the cyclists down on the right hand side, and when we came around the bend, if you look back up again, you could see them coming down on top. It was just, I don't know, it was nearly like Formula 1 racetrack. The roads being so smooth. It was just, you can see me there just shaking my hand. It was just pure delight. Eventually the road got a bit wider and a lot straighter with less bends on it. We started to pick up serious speed. I think at one stage I was clocking between 72 to 75k per hour, and there was no sign of it slowing down. Normally I'd be comfortable enough, but I don't know. I think the cracks in the road, parts of the road are a little bit bouncy. You're looking over the edge and you're saying, if I go over that barrier, there's just no coming back. So you kind of just pull back that little bit. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be a bit of a crack. It's supposed to be a bit of fun, and you want to enjoy it. You don't want to be scraped off the ground. It was serious speed. 75 kilometers an hour, and you're feathering your brakes to make sure that you're not hitting 80 plus 90. You know, it was surreal. We hit this little town called La Motta just before the climb. It was a small climb, but after the climb we'd done, it was another kick in the teeth. Unfortunately, I turned off the camera. I didn't realise that there was a man standing down the road with a cowbell as big as a suitcase, and he was swinging it between his legs and shouting, "Avanti, avanti, vai, vai, vai." Everybody on the street was cheering. Some of these little things, you miss them, but they're always there in your memory. The thing I was most worried about was the Mortorola climb. I didn't really know a lot about it before I went. Richie had looked at it on Sky and watched it on the Giro. He kind of said to me, "Steve, do you realise that we're doing this?" I just passed it off. Sure, it'll be fine. It'll be grand, you know. Don't worry about it too much. I didn't really know what I was talking about, and it was one tough bitch of a climb. I didn't record the climb because by the time I started up the climb, I didn't have the energy to push the button on the camera. I didn't even have the energy to worry about cameras or anything like that. It was just a case of trying to grind up this climb. Mortorola is just about 10 kilometers long, with an average of 11%, with up to 30% in parts, and it was just hell. It was hell. After reaching the food stop at the top of the Mortorola climb, I finally understood why Richie had made the comment. When I saw that climb, Steve, I felt sick. I never felt so tired in my life. I didn't know if I was going to be able to go on. I had cramps on top of my cramps. I just felt so tired. I could have just curled up and went to sleep where I was. The heat, lack of water, you know. But look, we were heading down now, and I was going to enjoy the bit of respite on the way down. Descending the Mortorola was enjoyable. It was an experience. The only bad thing I could say about the Mortorola descent is that the scenery gets even better. One moment you're going through the trees. You haven't seen anything for 2 or 3 hours because you've been climbing through trees. Every now and then you get a glimpse and your eyes get fixated on it, making you forget that you actually have to control your bike, so you tend to swerve off to the side a bit. The scenery is absolutely spectacular, and it's a beautiful spin down. Again, you do pick up serious speed. You're traveling at a fairly high pace, you know. Again, 60 kilometers an hour plus on roads that you don't know. You don't know what's around the next bend. You don't know how long the next bend is, how sharp it is. Is it an S bend? You just have to kind of go with it. Just looking at it here now, scenery is just amazing. There was one particular point where we were hammering down at about 70k, and next thing I just saw something black in my peripheral vision flying from the bike, and I heard a clatter with a really loud bang. I thought my wheel was after giving out. I didn't really know what was after happening. I thought it was a shard of carbon or something. So I pulled the brakes and I shouted down to Richie, "Richie, something's wrong!" We pulled in and looked down. I realised that it was my water bottle. I needed a bottle because I had no water left. So Richie took my bike and held it for a moment while I went back and got the bottle from the road. While I was gone, Richie was having a look at the bikes, and when I came back he said to me, "Steve, you know, feel the rims." I put my fingers on the rim of the wheel and they were just piping hot. They were stinging, they were so warm. The heat of the day and the friction from pulling the brakes meant you really had to be careful, because if they got too hot they could blow the tyres or blow the tubes. made me a little bit more wary going down, less harsh on the brakes, I suppose. It's crazy, really. A climb that had taken, I suppose, 2 to 2.5 hours to climb up now took about 10 to 15 minutes to descend. It was a wonderful descent, but it really didn't seem to, the reward didn't seem to justify the pain that we'd gone through, because even descending, my legs were still cramping. Now they weren't as bad, but I was just kind of trying to figure out how am I going to get the energy to finish this cycle. When I got to this point on the Stelvio where I had just started recording, I had about 6 kilometers left to go, and I thought to myself, well, that's not so bad, 6 kilometers. But at this stage I had absolutely nothing left. I was running on empty. I didn't have anything left in my body, and I don't even know how I was moving. I think it was just gravity was dragging me along. 6 kilometers didn't seem so bad, and I was thinking in my head, well, it won't take me too long to get there. And then I realised that I was averaging about 2 to 3 kilometers an hour, and at a maximum of 3 kilometers an hour it would take me at least 2 more hours to get 6k. I've never had to cycle that slow in my life, nor been able to cycle that slow in my life, yet in this instance I wasn't able to cycle any faster. But luckily enough, around the turn there was a bit of respite with a bit of flat road. Eventually I got to the base of the last part of the Stelvio. I remember at one point up ahead, it's not actually in the video clip, but the first aid workers offered me some food and water. I'd gotten some momentum back and I was on a false flat, so I just said no thank you, and just kept going. I knew in my heart and soul that if I'd stopped there, I would never have finished. It was just so hard, the pain. It was so disheartening seeing other people cycling back down. They'd finished, and they were wearing their caps, and they were delighted. But in fairness to them, they were encouraging us up the climb, shouting, "Avanti! Vai, vai, vai!" telling you to keep going in whatever words they had to tell you, encouraging you along. By the time I got near enough to the finish line, I think there were parts there that were about 18%. I was really digging so deep, just getting that last bit because I really had nothing. I had absolutely nothing, but I wasn't going to be the person on the camera, the person in the photograph walking the bike over the line. I wanted to cycle over. I was after getting this far, I had to finish. I had stopped, yes, many times, but I was going to finish, and I was going to do it on top of the bike, not walking beside it. My thoughts going over the line were, how was I going to feel? I was delighted, I was so happy to be finishing, but I just didn't have any energy left to conjure up any emotion. I was just numb. Numb is probably the best way to describe it. And as I crossed the line, there was Richie, standing waiting to take a picture, as I heard my name being called, confirming I had finished. I remember Richie coming over and putting his arms around me, and all I could say to him was, "Richie, I've nothing left. I can't laugh, I can't cry, I can't do anything. I'm just I'm empty. He took the bike off of me and put it away. You find energy from somewhere to talk and kind of get yourself back to normal, because you know you still have another 20k to go to get back down. But I think I was actually in shock. We had a forward planned and brought some Prosecco because we were adamant that we were going to finish. So we were going to celebrate in style, in Italian style, and we did. It was just a bit of crack. After about half an hour or so, we decided it was time to start making our way back down. Clouds were coming in and it was starting to get cold. I think the temperature was averaging about 9 degrees up there, whereas we had an average temperature down below of about 28 to 30 degrees. We'd been talking to a chap called Paul. He was from the UK. He gave us the best bit of advice so far. He said, "You've come this far, no one needs to be a hero now. So take your time going down." We knew that we'd have to go down slowly and easy, as there would be a lot of tired cyclists going in both directions. We just wanted to get there safely. The descent was nice, spectacular views again as you can see, but it was very cold. We'd brought up bags which had been transferred up previously, so we had some warm and dry clothes in it, but you could still feel the bite of the wind. You can see the snow all around, and this is in June. It was a great feeling to have done this. There was such a sense of elation, even if I was extremely tired. I guessed Richie was the same, but it just felt so good that we'd done this and we had achieved what we needed to achieve. We had really given it everything, and by giving it everything we had accomplished what we had set out to do. It was a really proud moment. It was kind of strange going back down. You're looking over the roads you've just struggled to get up, and you see the climbs that you've gone over and the hairpins and that. You question yourself, how did I do this? You ask yourself, what's inside of you? How can you actually dig that deep and do this? Why do you do this? What is it that is driving you? And really, you don't have the answers, but I think that one of the answers, if I was to answer it, is feeling going back down. That feeling of accomplishment, pride. This was for myself. I'd set a target. I'd gone along with a friend, a very good close friend, and the two of us had achieved something that I think 2 or 3 years ago we would never even have dreamed of doing. It was something that someone else would have done, not us. You're cycling in the footsteps of Copy, Pantani, Nibali, Roach, 1 and 2, I suppose, and of course King Kelly. The whole lot. They've all done it, and cycling is one of those sports. Probably one of the few sports where you can emulate your heroes. You can cycle in their football parks, their stadiums. You can do the same thing. It's no problem. There's no restrictions there, only the ones you place on your own dreams. You can't do that with every sport, but you can with cycling. I think that's what's nice about cycling. Not only that, you also get to see the world from a different perspective. I think the main reason I made this video was to show people that any Joe Soap can do these things. It's just a case of doing a bit of training and preparing yourself, then getting up off your arse and doing it. I would urge anybody who watches this video to get out there and do this. It doesn't have to be the Stelvio. Set your goal. Set your challenge and get out there and do it. Life is too short to let it pass you by. Reward yourself. Reward yourself in life by doing these things and by living. It's now nearly 6 months since I've done the Stelvio, and it's 6 months before I'm due to do it again. I hope I'm a little bit more prepared this time around. That's the only expectation I have. I'm not going to do the Mortorola this time. It's part of the Stelvio. It's just too hard. I've done it, and I don't feel the desire to do it again because it's so hard, but it's checked off. It's crossed off on the bucket list now. It's done. Looking back while I was making this video gives me a sense of nostalgia, and now I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm just remembering how hard it was, and I hope to have the guts to do it again. This time, I don't know how successful I'll be. The first time I was very successful because I guess I had the support of Richie helping me along, encouraging me, training with me, on the day pushing me and waiting for me. He was always there. Even when we got separated, I knew he was going to be up the road a bit. There's so many reasons why you should do this as opposed to having reasons for not doing it. The only reason you shouldn't do it is if you're not prepared, and that's only a small reason. The pros really outweigh the cons on this one. Even looking on the video there, now you can see the scenery is absolutely spectacular. I'm going to go now and let you enjoy what's left of this video in peace. This is the last part of the descent down towards Bormio. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd like to thank you for watching.